Check, check. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. And man, this is episode 2 already on season 3 here. And boy, we got some good stuff for you. I think it's going to be a good topic today. And hopefully this will benefit you guys, because I think this has been something that we've been in discussion with a lot of our clients and a lot of friends and family, and just picking their brains on different things. And so hopefully you guys find this a little bit encouraging, but also educating. And I think it'll be helpful because these are some things that I think we get frustrated with as realtors sometimes, but we also realize that maybe the person out there, the client that we're representing, may not know some of these things. And so we want to do our best to try to bring some of these things to the forefront so that you guys are aware of them, and then the excuse can no longer be given that I didn't know. But hopefully this will bridge the gap between you and your realtor and somebody that you're looking to work with in the future if you don't have a realtor. But things to think about. So these are going to be some things that you as a buyer or even a seller may not know that could sever your relationship with your agent without even knowing it. And so first and foremost, I'm doing this podcast to inform the public ways they can be a better client to their realtor. Okay, I'm not here to bash anyone. I'm not here to bash myself or other agents that I've worked with as it relates to some of these issues. But I'm simply here to tell you the truth and to tell you through my experience, through others' experiences on my team, and things that we've discussed, what will hopefully benefit you as a client moving forward, and maybe get you to think about some things that you may not have ever thought about before, or even thought about when you were working with your previous realtor or experience in real estate. And so this will hopefully clear some things up, but also build a great relationship for you moving forward. And so you see, some clients I think have no clue what they're doing when they get involved in a real estate transaction or with an agent, and that's okay. Most people are in the same boat. However, after this podcast, I don't think you will no longer have the excuse as it relates to these issues, because you'll be held to a higher standard and may owe some friends you know who are realtors an apology. No, I'm kidding. But no, seriously, you might. So I'm not kidding. Because I think there's some things here that some people just may have no clue that they even did this or did anything like this moving forward in their previous transactions. And so I share some of these stories with you. Some of them are my stories. Some of them are some people on my team's stories. Some of them are friends who are realtors and their stories. But just things that we've shared with each other as we've discussed some of these things. And we discuss these things because they mean a lot to us, right? Like, there's a reason why these things mean a lot to us as we are having a discussion about them, right? So be aware and know that too, that like the reason why we're having these discussions is not to like bag or diss or do any of those things with on anybody, but it's I think out of frustration, for ourselves to be better agents or better communicate these things. And so I'm going to jump right into this. So the rule number 1 that I'm going to speak on and give some examples here for you guys, and you've heard me say it before, but be loyal. Especially if that agent has already taken the time to answer your questions, if they've met with you in person, maybe they've taken you on a few showings and all that kind of stuff. Like, if you have spent a lot of time doing things then with this person, then you owe it to them to be loyal. Now, again, I get it if they suck or you feel like they don't have enough knowledge or experience, or it just doesn't mesh well, like, great, then go find somebody else that does. But if there's no reason for you to change an agent, and you like working with this person, stay loyal to them, okay? Because the reality is, in our line of work, here's the thing that happens. Like, there's a lot of time spent doing things in real estate that we never get paid for, and it sucks. Like, I'm just being real and I'm being open and honest about it. Like, there is so much stuff that we do that we don't ever get paid on. And I want to share a story with you as it relates to some of this stuff, because a lot of us like spend the majority of our time on the go. Like when I say a lot of us, I mean agents. Like we're driving to showings, we're meeting people for coffee and lunches and dinners, and we're networking with other professionals in our industry, and also those that work within our industry, right? And so on. And so the least you can do from a client perspective is commit to your agent. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you like your agent and you feel like they are truly looking out for your best interest, don't go shopping for another agent. And here's some things and some examples that I can think of that I think may not come to mind as it relates to these things and these issues from a first-time home buyer perspective or just a buyer in general, because they just don't think through this process very well or know that they're offending their agent or severing that relationship when they do some of these things. So let me share some of these examples with you. Okay, the first one is meeting with a builder without your agent. Okay, so the agent gets cut out of the deal because they weren't with you in the first meeting or whatever when you went and met with an agent, whether that's you walking through a couple of their model homes or spec homes or whatever. A lot of builders will say, well, since the agent wasn't with you the first time, which I think is bull crap, because I think I want my clients to have the freedom to go, and if they're driving through a neighborhood someday and they see an open house with the builder's spec house or open house, like they should be able to walk through that, and they shouldn't be held to a standard of, well, sorry, your agent isn't going to get paid now because you came and met with us and they weren't with you. Like, I think that's kind of shady in my opinion, but it does happen, and it happens with a lot of builders, at least here in Omaha. And so it doesn't matter how much time that agent has spent with that client and has gone out and showed them properties or met with them for coffee or spent numerous hours on the phone with them talking about stuff. Like, if they're not there, a lot of times the builders will cut that agent. Now, here's what the lie that is shared, and I know this because I've been in the new construction industry before. I work with a lot of different builders here in Omaha and things like that, and so I've seen this happen. I hear other agents who are representing builders share these things, so I know it's true. And this is what happens. A lot of builders will say that, hey, if you cut out your agent, you'll save X amount of dollars, right? Like, we won't have to pay them a commission, or they don't exactly come out and say that. But here's the reality. The truth is, these builders have already built in this commission to their base price. So what that means is they're not saving you any money. It may look like that as you sign a contract or whatever. They may tell you that they're saving you money, but they've built this commission cost already into their base price. And so what happens then is these buyers get all excited because they're like, oh, we just saved, you know, X amount of dollars because now we don't have to pay that commission, which, by the way, as a buyer, you're not paying the commission anyway. It's coming from the seller, or in this case, the builder. So you're not paying any extra money for that. But in this case, as you're working with the builder, oh, well, we'll take X amount of dollars off the build. Well, that's not saving the builder or you any money. It's actually saving or benefiting the builder in that essence and in that perspective, that situation, sorry. And so basically what's happening there is there's a lie being told. And so builders love this because it saves them money, not you. So basically they may say that, oh, hey, you know, now this is a cost to you that we can use for these or whatever. Well, they've already built that into their base price. They're not taking it out. They're not doing anything else with it but pocketing the extra money. So if they don't have to pay out a 2.4 or 3% commission there, what's that doing for the builder? It's putting extra money in his pocket because you're still paying that base price no matter if you're represented by an agent or not. Which, again, think about that for a second. So it doesn't matter to them if you're represented by an agent or not, because they're still going to pocket the same amount of money, right? And they're going to pocket more if they don't have to pay out that 2.4% commission there to a buyer's agent, or 3% commission there, whatever it is. So keep that in mind. So that's one way that you could sever that relationship with your agent without even knowing it, right? And it happens sometimes. It happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to agents on my team, you know, where we get a call from the builder that's like, hey, your client came in today And, unfortunately they signed paperwork with us and you weren't there. So you're not getting paid on the deal. And that's just the way it is. And so, yeah, it's frustrating and it sucks. And especially if you spend a lot of time with them, that's one way that we don't get paid then ever from that perspective. And so another thing that, another example that I can give you is when you go to an open house, and you go to an open house without telling the agent there that's hosting the open house who you're working with. So you actually go into that, and like a lot of times a good agent will ask who's hosting an open house will say, hey, welcome to the open house, blah, blah, blah. Are you guys currently working with an agent, or are you new? Are you out looking? Like, they kind of just ask that question very quickly or whatever, and you have the response then to say, yeah, actually we are working with so-and-so, or most people will say, well, no, not really, or whatever the case is, and then that person kind of slides into that role of, basically like, well, I can help you, and then you're caught in this like awkward moment of like, well, shoot, like, what do? We really like this house, and we know we've been working with this person over here, but like we just told this person we're kind of not, and then you're put in a situation where you're like, well, let's just write up with them in hopes that like maybe we'll get a deal or a discount. Again, you're not getting a discount or a deal. You're actually putting more money in that agent's pocket because they're representing the seller. They're not representing you, even though they may tell you that. They first signed up to represent the seller or the builder, so they're working with them. So you need to understand that it benefits you, again, to say that we're working with so-and-so and they're going to be our agent if we were to write up on this property or whatever, and then it just eliminates that awkwardness and that situation from ever happening. Okay, here's the next thing that I think happens way more often than I think people would admit to, but we see it all the time. If you're using a third-party app such as like Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, other apps like that, don't click on the give me more info or the contact agent, okay? What that's going to do is it's going to connect you to a different agent that's paying for that zip code or that cost in that area to work with that company. So Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, whatever. They're paying them money to feed them leads. So basically what they're doing, what those sites do, is it's clickbait for any buyer or any person looking to buy a house. They want you to click on that because then it'll get forwarded to an agent who's waiting to basically come and service those needs of that buyer that's looking for that house. So if you're someone that does use those things and you're working with a realtor, here's the best advice I can give you. Literally take a screenshot or take the address down and send that to your agent and say, hey, we're really interested in this house. We want to go see it. And then they'll set that appointment up for you and they won't have to go through those third-party services. Okay, does that make sense? So again, it's not someone, so here's where it gets frustrating from a realtor standpoint, right? Let's say I'm working with Sally and Sally says, I've met with her for coffee, we've exchanged numerous text messages and phone calls, so a lot of time together. We've went and looked at houses and we've basically developed that relationship, right? And then she finds a house on Zillow. She goes home, she finds a house on Zillow, and she's like, well, I'm just going to click on this real fast because I want to go see it. And instead of contacting that agent that she's been working with, she contacts the contact agent through Zillow or whatever. Now she gets a call. This agent's like, oh, yeah, hey, I'll run over there and I'll show you the house. They go show them the house. They write up on the property. That agent now gets paid a commission. And the agent that she was previously working with, me, I don't get paid. Right now it's the agent that gets paid that wrote up the contract with her. Again, I think sometimes, as buyers, you don't know the difference, right? You don't have a clue. You don't understand that's how this system works. Now you do, right? So now that expectation is, since you do know that, stay loyal to that agent that you're working with so that they can get paid at the end of the day, right? That's, I think, one of the hardest things as being a real estate agent is we can work and work and work, and we can have 60, 80 hours spent in a week, but it doesn't equate to an equal pay, right? Because we can go work and we can go show houses and we can meet with people, we can do all this stuff, but if we don't ever get anybody under contract, like, we don't get paid. And so that's what is the constant grind from a real estate perspective of like always having to go and go and go, is because we don't get paid until we know that that deal gets closed at the end of the day. And so, for us, we do want to get paid for that time, so the more deals we can do, the more that offsets all this time that comes along with the job. I hope that makes sense. But just trying to lay it out there so people can understand and know that. So how do you avoid these things I discussed, right? Like always stay in contact with your agent and communicate. If you're wanting to meet with a builder, let your agent set that appointment up, okay? Going to an open house, invite your agent to join you and bring their business card along with you so that you can hand it to the agent hosting the open house. If you see a house on Zillow, forward that address to your agent and let them set up that appointment. Rule of thumb, when in doubt, reach out to your agent for advice, okay? Like that's literally the best advice that I can give you. So I want to go through some common myths, though, to avoid believing as it relates to some of these topics, right? Because I hear this a lot from clients as well. So common myths to avoid believing in as it relates to some of these things. My agent is too busy, right? Like so many times we'll hear like, oh, well, we know you're busy and we just decided to go and check it out. We just didn't know. Like, I don't want to ask them to go with me if I'm just checking things out, right? Like, listen, if your agent is too busy for you, then you need to find a new agent. That's the reality, right? Like, if your agent should have a desire to go with you so they can get to know your needs and wants as it pertains to a house and not allow someone else, another agent, right? Like in my example there at the open house or whatever, to swoop in, or someone on Zillow to close a deal when they haven't done any of the work and the other one has, preparing you for this moment, right? So like, again, I guess that would be the devil's advocate to say like, well, hey, if my agent didn't want to go with me, I invited them, they didn't want to go with me, and this other agent was there, okay, I understand that then, right? But at least give your agent the opportunity. The other thing I hear a lot is like, we don't want to bother you on the weekend, or we're sorry it's Sunday or Saturday, like we just didn't want to bother you, or we don't want to bother them on the weekend. Like, why? That'd be my question. This is what we do. Like, we work on the weekends and every other day. Like, don't shy away from waiting to take advantage, for wanting to take advantage of having a realtor, right? Call them, text them, bring them along. Trust me, the really good agent longs for this because it allows them to get to know their clients on a more personal level, and it lets them do what they do best, work on the weekends and nights, because that's when most people are off work. Does that make sense? Like, most people can't go see a house during the day. Some can. Most people can't. Now with COVID and everything, maybe that's a more of a bigger option for a lot of people, but in most cases, people still have to go to work and they still aren't available until they get off work. And so that usually falls on nights and weekends, right? So just keep that in mind. Another myth here, like I think that we hear sometimes, is my agent won't care if I reach out to this for sale by owner. Okay, let me be clear. We most certainly do care and would rather set the appointment up for you. Why? Because that homeowner has no desire to be represented by an agent, right? So what does that tell you about their interest in you? Like, they quite frankly don't care because they don't want to be represented, right? They probably don't want to be represented because they don't want to pay out a commission, which again, if you look at statistics year after year, a for sale by owner makes less money than they do if they were represented by an agent after paying out a commission. That's coming from the National Board of Realtors. They do these studies every single year. Every single year we sit there and we look back and we're like, man, that person could have netted $20, $30, $40, $50,000 more for their house if they would have used an agent, and they would have paid out X amount of dollars, and so they're still coming out with more money. So I don't know how people don't understand it. I don't know why people choose not to use a realtor. Yes, you can sell your house on your own, but why would you not use these other things to your advantage by hiring a realtor and letting them use the resources and tools that they have and the people that they know to drive more people to your property and create more traffic, and in turn, especially in this market, create multiple offers in a situation where you're going to walk away with more money. again, I'll be upfront with you and real. Like sometimes there are a lot of agents that hate working with for sale by owners. They hate working with them because one, they're usually cheapskates when it comes to their money, and they don't want to fix things. They obviously don't want to pay out a commission, and so they fight back and forth about this 2.5%, 3% commission, or 6% commission of listing their house, when they don't realize that they could make way more money doing that to begin with. But somehow they get caught up on like this number of this percentage of commission, instead of looking at the number that they're going to net when they sell their house by using a realtor. Again, I don't get it, but it's one of those things where I think you just need to be aware of as you're thinking out there. So that's why a lot of people don't want to work. I don't mind working with for sale by owners. In fact, in most cases, I've found it to be fairly quite smooth. But again, there are a lot of issues that come up when you work with for sale by owners just because they're not being represented. And so a lot of times I end up working for both sides of the transaction without really the for sale by owner even knowing that, but just doing a lot of extra stuff that you don't get paid for. But I care that my clients want this house, and I'm going to make sure that they get this house and that things stay going smoothly. So we just make it work. But again, that's the other thing there that I want you to know, is that a lot of times there are things that go wrong, and so it's good to be represented by an agent. So just because they're choosing not to be represented, you can be represented. You can still have your agent get paid out of that. If the seller says we still don't want to pay a commission, you can work in the deal where you can at least make sure that your agent that you're getting, that is representing you, can still get paid. So there's options there, okay? So don't think that that's not an option or that everyone's saving money, when in reality, there's actually benefiting no one in that case, in some of those cases there. So just keep that in mind. So those are some myths as it relates to some of those topics, okay? So we talked about being loyal and some of those things about that relate to some of those things and topics there. Now on to number 2, trust your realtor. Okay, in a day and age where we are in real estate, things get crazy in our markets, okay? Things shift rapidly and things change constantly. So the more and more we deal with supply and demand issues, the more you need to trust your realtor. So what can you trust them with in a seller's market today, right? Like there's a lot of things that we may need to trust them with. And so I wrote down some things that you can ask that realtor as you're working with them, especially as it relates to the current market conditions. So here's one of the things that you can think about, and this is going to help you build that trust with your realtor, right? Because they're going to start sharing some of these stories with you, and it'll start giving you some insight on who your realtor actually is as well. So ask them, like, what are you doing to get buyers under contract today? And what challenges do you see with our situation that may need our expectations set correctly prior to buying or selling? Okay, did you hear me in that? So one is, ask them, like, what are you doing today in this current market with all this craziness happening? For example, today, like, there's 203 houses on the market here in Omaha, right? Like, so in a market where there's 203 houses on the market and there's 3,800 agents plus, like in Omaha, you do the math and you can know that there's not a lot of agents that are going to make some money right now. What are you doing to get buyers under contract today? So what are the things that you're maybe saying or doing to prepare your buyers to get them ready to buy in a market such as this? What are some challenges that you see with our current situation? So maybe it's a financial situation where they've been pre-approved for a specific loan. Is that going to cause any challenges in this market? And then what are some expectations that we can set correctly prior to buying or selling, so that we kind of know what to expect and what we're getting ourselves into? Because if you're in a market such as this, like I just said, 203 houses on the market, and you're going out there, I can guarantee you there's way more buyers out there than there are houses. And so you may be writing up 3, 4, 5, 6 different times before you get your first house under contract, right? Because you're going to be in these multiple offer situations. So what can we do to prepare ourselves for that, right? Because it can be exhausting, it can be draining, it can be stressful. It can take all of the energy out of you. So what are the things that we can be doing to make sure that those expectations are set correctly. Okay? What do you see happening in this market that are out of your control, and how do you pivot and address those issues when they arise? I think that's a great question, because that will give you insight into how much experience and knowledge does this person have with what is happening in this current market. And not only that, but it'll tell you, how well does this person pivot and deal with change, right? So as things arise, does this person have the experience? Does this person have the knowledge and what to do when things don't necessarily go our way, right? Like, what are some stories that have taken place that you can share with us where maybe this has been an issue or something that has come up? Like, I think these are great questions to ask, and then it lets you get some insight on like the agent that you're working with. How do you know you're going to look out for our best interests and not try to put another transaction together? Like, share a story with us about a situation you have been in that would confirm you care more about what is more about what is best in our interest than just completing another transaction. So, as well as I know, there are a lot of agents out there that care just about putting another transaction together, and they're going and they're going and they're going, and they don't care about the actual people that they're working with. Those people piss me off, if I'm being quite frank. I've worked with them. I've advised sometimes, even when we're in a situation, because I care about both sides of the transaction, where I've said, like, hey, maybe that's not the best interest of your seller, or maybe that's not the best interest of your buyer. And they're like, we don't care. Like, let's just get this done. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. Like, I do care though. Like, I care about those other people involved too, even though they're not my clients. But like, let's make sure that we're doing the right thing, right? Because just because I'm involved in this transaction and I'm representing my client, like, I understand there's both sides of the transaction that are happening. And so you want to get an idea for the agent that you're working with, that, okay, if I'm in a situation where I should walk away, or I should get some legal counsel, or I should do whatever that may be, are they going to be the type of person that's going to advise that type of thing for you, or are they just going to try to push and force this transaction through? I'm never a person that I've told my team, whenever I'm training and whenever I'm going through, I'm like, don't ever try to force anything. It's not worth it. No matter how much you wish or hope that deal would go through, like, do not do it if it's not in your best interest or their best interest or in the best interest of everybody involved, because it's only going to turn into some turmoil, right? And in most cases, in those types of situations, thank God we've never been in any of those. We've been in a couple where it's gotten to the point where we've had to bring in some legal counsel, but like some stuff that hasn't actually gone to court because we've been able to handle it. But what I'm saying is, like, you need to find the right person that knows what to do in those situations and that would step in and point you in the right direction and getting that counsel if needed, right? They're not going to try to force it, okay? Listen to the answers that they give to these questions. It's going to tell you very quickly if you can trust them, especially in this market. Trust, I think, is huge in any relationship, and your realtor should be able to exemplify that pretty easy by sharing some stories that show you their true motives in being in the business, right? Like, so by asking these questions above, that should give you a pretty good idea of what their motive is behind being in the business and why they do what they do. They need to be able to trust you as well, though, right? So, like, that goes back to what we were talking about with the loyalty thing above. This is a teamwork thing. So you have to work together and trust each other through this, okay? So be loyal, trust your realtor, and then as we get through loyalty and trust, now we talk about experience. This is one that I think is interesting because in a lot of cases, not all, but we as realtors tend to tread lightly with this because we are afraid of hurting someone's feelings, or we're afraid of speaking up because it's just like it's one of our best friends, or it's whatever the case is, right? But like, reality is, though, I believe our job, at least my job as a realtor, is not to sugarcoat anything, but to be as transparent and honest as possible with my clients. So sometimes that means telling them as it is. Like, in other words, if I have a pulse on the market and I know what it's going to take to even be in the running for a specific house in a specific price range, And what that buyer needs to do, I need to set that expectation, right? They need to know what to expect. The seller also needs to know what we have seen on other properties so they know what to prepare for, right? So my job is not to sugarcoat anything, but my job is to be upfront and honest with them and say, hey, here's the deal. This is what we're seeing right now in our market as we represent buyers. This is what we're seeing right now as we represent sellers. And we're able to speak into that. We're able to set that expectation up front. And we're able to say, okay, I just need to be real with you. Because of your financial situation, or because of the fact that you want to get an inspection, or because of this, or whatever the case may be, I need to be real with them and say, here's the challenges that lie ahead with those things, right? Like just the other day, I'm out getting ready to write a contract with some of my clients. And they're like, well, what do you think about an inspection? And I was like, here's the deal. We already know there's multiple offers on the table. It's probably going to be one of the first things that goes if they're looking at the multiple offers. If someone's asking for an inspection, they're gonna set that one off to the side because they've probably got 5 or 6 others over here that aren't asking for one. Does that mean that I'm not ever recommending not getting an inspection? Absolutely not. Like, I think inspections are good. I think you should get an inspection if you can, right? I think that even in today's market, if you even get a house where you didn't get an inspection, I think it's wise to go get an inspection afterwards, where you can have an inspector come through, and it's almost like a post-inspection where you're like, hey, just give us the peace of mind, or at least let us know, like, if there's things we need to get fixed right away, let's get them fixed. I think that's wise. I think that's something that you can do. I think that's a recommendation that I'm giving my clients, as far as, okay, hey, if we get this house and we waive the inspection, I think it'd be wise to get one afterwards, and or at least have somebody come through with you as you're touring the property, look at some things, make sure that like all the major things are done with, and then you can address some of the smaller things later, you know? So again, I want to make it clear that I would never recommend not getting an inspection, right? I think it's wise to get one, but in today's market, in most cases, I'm going to be absolutely real with you that, like, I don't remember the last time I've gotten a contract accepted where we've asked for an inspection. That's in all price ranges. Like, that's just being real. And so I think by setting that expectation for people, then they understand that, like, oh, okay, so I probably can't ask for an inspection, probably not going to get a home warranty. You know, like, we can try for some of those things, but the reality is, if there's multiple offers on the property, that's probably not going to happen, right? It's setting that right expectation. Hey, we might have to pay a difference in the appraisal gap. What does that mean? Well, here's what that means, and we walk through that. Hey, we might have to do an escalation clause up to this amount. Well, what amount do you recommend? Well, here's what we've been seeing on previous offers as we've been representing the sellers in this price range. We've seen things go all the way up to this. So, like, if you're comfortable doing that, I would recommend going to this point. Doesn't mean you're going to pay that, but it means that we can put ourselves in the best position possible to go compete for this house, right? Again, it's just setting that expectation, and it's being real and upfront with these people so they understand and know what they're going to need to do to go get a house. I mean, it's crazy to me. And I mean, I think of like COVID. Like, for example, since this has been a discussion and a topic that everyone has been talking about for the last couple of years. Like, it's crazy to me to think about as you look back, right, at like COVID. And if you're anyone that's ever gone and got tested, right, like, you go get tested, they give you this test, right, and they're like, okay, hey, you're positive, you need to go home and quarantine. Okay, great. Is there any medication, or is there anything that I can take to help with the process of feeling better? Nope, just go home and quarantine. What? Like, what do you mean? Okay, like, I'm just supposed to go home and okay, like, just rest? All right, I'll just go home. When there was actually, like, medication out there that people could have been taking to get them better faster, none of those things were being recommended in a lot of cases. And again, that goes to show in this situation where it's kind of like the same thing. It's like, all right, guys, let's go buy a house. Well, what do we need to do? We'll figure it out when we get there. Or there's nothing we need to do. We'll just write up when it's like, no, like, let's set the expectation. Let's put some things in motion and some things in place so that we can be in a better position to go get that house, right? Like, I want to get better if I have COVID. Like, I want to get better as fast as I can. I don't want to just sit there in quarantine for 10 days when it first started out and just sit there and like not be able to take anything to help me get better. Like, I'm just supposed to go home and like, so it's things like that where it's like, you know, you can be the average agent where it's like, yeah, let's go and let's start looking. Or you can be the agent that goes out there and you can say, hey guys, like, we need to set the correct expectations for our current situation. And you do that, and I think it's going to make, everyone that much better, okay? So I think that's one thing that you can do there as it relates to like this experience, right? Experience, in my opinion, is so important in today's world of buying and selling real estate, okay? Like, no offense, but I don't think anyone wants just a good agent. They want the best, right? Like, nobody wants just like an average good agent or good person or whatever it is in any industry, right? Like, you want the best. Like, if I need a knee replacement, I don't want to just go to Joe Schmo over here that like nobody knows about and maybe is just an average guy, right? Like, no, I'm going to do my research and I'm going to go find like, hey, who's the best guy to do a knee replacement here in town, right? Like, it's the same thing in real estate. Like, you want the best negotiator. You want the best listing agent if you're listing your house. You want the best buyer's agent if you're going out to buy. You want the best networking agent, right? Like, you want, in today's world, you need an agent that has a good reputation, not just with past clients, but with other agents and professionals in and around the field. It can be, honestly, what gets a deal done. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a multiple offer situation, right? And there's been like 3 or 4 offers on the table that are exactly the same. Mine's included in that mix. And that agent calls me up, and that agent says, hey Ryan, you know, I just wanted to let you know, you guys, congratulations, you got this offer. There were really like 3 or 4 different offers that were around the same. But since we've done deals together and since I know you're going to get this done and it's going to be smooth, I've chosen you. And we've chosen you to work with. And like, that is such an amazing feeling and great feeling when I'm like, wow, like that's crazy, where I know that we've put in our best foot forward and we've done everything that we can. But then it's also like, man, talk about like never burning bridges, right? Like, talk about always being in network with other people and having a good reputation, doing things with integrity, doing the right thing. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, caring about both sides of the transaction, right? Because when you do that, it shows these other agents and other people involved as well that like you do care about every single person that's involved, right? Like, I care about the title person that's helping us. Shout out Alejandra. Like, Alejandra is amazing when it comes to dealing with our title and stuff. And like, when I get a phone call from her, like, I pick it up because I'm like, hey Alejandra, what's up? Like, what's going on? What can I help you with? She does the same for me. Like, it's this mutual relationship of respect and friendship that we're like, man, we will go to bat for each other because we love working with one another, but like, we also understand the team and the importance of that. It's the same thing when I'm working with other agents. Like, if a problem arises, it's like, how do we go and we figure out what the best solution is to this problem? Like, I'm not cussing that agent out. That agent's not cussing me out. We're not going back and forth. Now, I will say this, with COVID and with everything else that has happened in the past, like, it does have people on edge sometimes, right? Like, there's a lot of financial stress going on. There's a lot of emotional stress. There's a lot of other different types of stress that's happening throughout a transaction nowadays. So like, you do need to sometimes tread lightly, where it's like, okay, like if someone's upset, what's the real root of this problem, right? Like, where is this all stemming from? And once you get to that and you do it calmly, respectfully, like, then you understand that like, oh, there's more to the situation than what it first started out with, right? Like, sometimes people just need to calm down a little bit or have someone guide them through that process, right? And that again goes back to experience, right? Like, I was coaching one of my agents the other day and she called me up and she's like, my client's really freaking out because they're not getting what they thought they were getting from a net, and they just got the final numbers and they signed off on everything, but like they're upset and they're angry and they're frustrated. And I said, okay, calm down. Like, and she was upset because she was like, I really care about these guys. And I presented the numbers. The number, I was off by a couple $100, so it's not like I was off by like tens of thousands of dollars or whatever and what they were going to net. And I told her, I said, you know what? Sometimes there may be some other things that are behind all of these things, right? So I said, give it some time, give it a day or two, let some things kind of settle, and then like revisit that with them. And so she's like, okay, and I finally like caught back up with her. Turns out like he had lost some family member in his family, and they were going through that. They were actually buying another house, right? So they had the stress of, okay, we're getting ready to move. Someone just died in my family, so now there's funeral plans, and now there's all these other things going on. All these family members are contacting him as far as like arrangements and all that kind of stuff. So like that's adding more to his plate on top of, like, moving is stressful in general, right? But then you throw all that other stuff in there, and it's like, now I'm sure that like you're thinking about money when you're like, well, now we got a funeral to pay for. Now we've got all these other things. Like, you weren't thinking about those things as you were getting ready to sell your house, right? And so that money starts to go down and decrease a little bit as you're thinking about what's going to have to get paid for now. And so all of that stuff got brought out later, right? And so sometimes we just don't know what the big pictures of the story is, right? But like, that's why you stay calm. That's why you have that experience of like reading people and knowing that like, okay, my job is to like keep people calm, keep things moving forward, keep it as smooth as possible, but not allow some of these hiccups and these things along the way to destroy the transaction, because everybody at the end of the day wants to still close, right? Like that's usually the end goal for everyone. And so you just have to keep that in mind, and you have to just go through and work your way through that. So anyways, I don't know where I was going with that story. I don't know, somebody needed to hear it. The last thing I'll say here is, for a first-time home buyer, for someone that's out there again, like buying a house, even 3 years, 5 years, 10 years later, times have changed, right? Things have changed since I've sold my first couple of houses, right? This is with anything though. So make sure you choose someone who has enough experience to speak into your current needs in the current market. You want someone who is going to know how to guide you properly through the home buying or selling experience this go around. Like, make sure you use someone that's knowledgeable, that has experience, that can be trusted, that you can be loyal to, that's going to be loyal to you. And I hope as you do those things and you ask some of these questions that I gave you in this podcast earlier, it will help you understand how you can be a better client for your realtor, and how you can seek out that realtor to be that best fit for you. Okay, I hope this helped you guys understand how you can discern and choose wisely who your next agent will be, but also give you pointers on how you can be a loyal, trustworthy client to your agent as well. So if you have anything else you'd like to add in the future, let me know. I'll put it in a future episode. I do have another one that I'm already working on for you guys that I think is going to be interesting and will help you as well. And this is kind of more so from the agent's perspective. Just about, I'll give you kind of a tidbit here of like, I was asked the question, what makes your job the most challenging? What's one of the things that is kind of like the most challenging in your job? And so I'm going to be sharing not one, but some of those things and how it relates to my job and me personally, and also just share with you guys some stories that I think will benefit you, to help give you some insight on what it is and what it looks like to actually be a realtor and what that encompasses, instead of just always having people ask me like, well, like, all you do is buy and sell houses, like it can't be that difficult, like what do you do as an agent? Like, here's some of the things that I'm going to get into in this next podcast, and I'm going to be talking about some of the things that come along with that, like financial stress, emotional stress, dealing with time, dealing with things that we can't control. And then I'm going to give some advice for the listeners and for those of you out there. So I think it'll be a good one for you, so stay tuned for that coming up here in the future. But I hope this one has helped you guys. Thank you so much for listening. This is episode 2, season 3. Thanks again for following. Again, let me know, you guys, if there are topics or things that you want me to cover. I'd be more than happy to do it. So I'm looking forward to doing that for you in the future and the rest of this year. Happy New Year, 2022, coming in hot, and it's going to be another great year in real estate. We'll talk to you guys soon.